The first time she knocked on his door, Caleb thought she had the wrong house, because women like her didn't come out this far. Not to this worn-out ranch sitting miles outside a small town in southern Utah, where the land was dry, the nights were cold, and most people minded their own business. And definitely not asking for shelter. "Can I stay in your barn?" she said. No greeting, no explanation, just that. Caleb Carter stood there, leaning slightly against the doorframe, a chipped coffee mug in his hand. His 7-year-old son, Luke, peeked out from behind him, holding onto his shirt like always when strangers showed up. Caleb frowned. She didn't belong here. That was the first thing that hit him. Her boots were clean. Not new, but not used like someone who worked land. Her jacket looked expensive, fitted in a way people around here didn't bother with. And the way she stood, straight, controlled, she looked like someone used to being in charge. But her face told a different story. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired you fix with sleep, the kind that sits in your bones. "I'll work," she added, her voice calm but low. "Whatever you need, feeding animals, cleaning, anything." Caleb let out a short breath through his nose. "You lost?" he asked. She didn't even blink. "No." Too quick, too certain. Luke tugged his sleeve. "Dad, who is she?" Caleb ignored the question, still watching her closely. That's when he noticed the car, parked down the dirt road, half hidden behind a bend. Black, sleek, expensive enough to cost more than everything he owned combined. Yeah. She wasn't lost. She was hiding. "You got money?" Caleb asked bluntly. He didn't sugarcoat things. Never had. Her expression tightened just a little. "I do," she said, "but that's not why I'm here." That answer made even less sense. People with money didn't ask for barns. They booked rooms, bought property, stayed invisible in comfort. Caleb crossed his arms. "Then why here?" She hesitated, just for a second. But he caught it. "I need a place no one will look," she said finally. That settled it. Trouble, the quiet kind that doesn't knock twice. Caleb should have said no right then. He had enough problems. Bills stacking up, crops barely making it, a kid to raise on his own. He didn't need whatever this was. But Luke stepped forward before he could speak. "You can stay," the boy said softly. "It gets really cold at night." Exhaling slowly. Of course his kid would say yes. When he opened them again, she was looking at Luke, and something shifted in her expression. Not sympathy, not kindness, something deeper, like his words hit somewhere she wasn't ready to deal with. Caleb shook his head slightly. "The barn's a mess," he said, "and I'm not responsible for you." "I'm not asking you to be," she replied. A beat of silence passed. Then Caleb stepped aside. "One night," he said. "That's it." She nodded once. "Thank you." Simple words, but they didn't sound natural coming from her, like she wasn't used to needing anyone. As she walked past him, Caleb felt it, that gut feeling he'd learned not to ignore. This wasn't just some stranger asking for help. This was the kind of story that changes things, and not always for the better. Caleb didn't sleep much that night, not because of the wind rattling the loose tin on the roof, or the usual worries that kept him up, but because there was a stranger sleeping in his barn, a stranger who didn't fit anywhere near his life. Around 2 a.m., he got up, pulled on his jacket, and stepped outside. The air was cold, dry, and sharp enough to wake anyone up, the kind of Utah night where silence felt louder than noise. He walked toward the barn, boots crunching against the dirt. A faint light flickered inside. That made him pause. He pushed the door open slowly. She was awake. Sitting on an overturned crate, sleeves rolled up, carefully wrapping a bandage around her hand. A small first aid kit lay open beside her. Clean, organized, expensive looking. Nothing like the cheap supplies Caleb kept around. She looked up the second she heard him. No panic, no surprise, just awareness. "You always check on your guests like this?" she asked. Caleb leaned against the doorframe. I don't usually have guests. His eyes dropped to her hand. What happened? Buy it. You're not good at lying, he replied. That got a reaction. Not much, but enough. A slight tightening of her jaw. Neither are you, she shot back. Caleb almost smiled. Almost. He stepped inside, glancing around. She'd already cleaned part of the barn, swept a corner, laid out some old blankets neatly, even organized a few tools stacked along the wall. You didn't have to do that, he said. I said I'd work. It's the middle of the night. I couldn't sleep. That part, he believed. There was a pause, quiet but not empty. Then Luke's voice echoed faintly from the house. Dad? Caleb straightened immediately. I'll be back, he said, already turning. Caleb, he stopped. That was the first time she said his name. Slowly he looked over his shoulder. How do you know my name? He asked. She held his gaze for a second. Then, I heard your son say it. A beat. It made sense, but something about it still didn't sit right. Caleb nodded once, not fully convinced, and headed back to the house. By morning, she was already outside, working. Caleb stepped out onto the porch and stopped. She was hauling a water bucket across the yard like she'd been doing it her whole life. Her movements weren't perfect, but they weren't clueless either. She adapted quickly, adjusting her grip, her pace. Luke stood nearby, watching her like she was the most interesting thing he'd seen in months. What's your name? Luke asked. She set the bucket down, catching her breath. Emma, she said after a brief pause. Caleb noticed it. That pause, like she had to pick the name. Luke smiled. I'm Luke. I know, she replied softly. Caleb walked down the steps. You don't have to prove anything, he said. One night's over. Emma looked at him. No, she said. I'd like to stay longer. Direct. Calm, like she had already decided. Caleb frowned. That's not what we agreed. I'll earn it. That's not the problem. Then what is? He hesitated, then said it straight. I don't trust you. Silence. Emma didn't argue, didn't defend herself. She just nodded slightly. That's fair, she said. And somehow, that answer bothered him more than anything else. Before we continue the story, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and if you ever love someone with your pure heart. So, subscribe to this channel so you never miss the best stories. Caleb tried to ignore her. That was the plan. Let her work, let her stay out of the way, and wait until she got tired enough to leave on her own. But by the third day, that plan was already falling apart, because Emma didn't act like someone passing through. She worked like she had nowhere else to be. And worse, Luke had already gotten attached. Can she stay? Luke asked that morning, sitting at the small kitchen table, swinging his legs. Just for a few days? Caleb didn't look up from his coffee. We'll see. That means no, Luke muttered. Caleb sighed. It means I'm thinking. But truth was, he wasn't thinking. He was watching. Watching how Emma moved, how she spoke, what she avoided, and what she didn't. She didn't ask questions, not about him, not about the farm, not about why there was no woman's presence in the house. Most people did. She didn't, and that made it worse. Later that afternoon, Caleb found her near the fence line, struggling with a loose post. You're doing it wrong, he said. Emma didn't argue. She stepped back slightly. Then show me. He grabbed the hammer from her, adjusted the post, and drove it in properly. Like that, he said. She watched carefully, not casually, focused, like she needed to get it right. You learn fast, Caleb admitted. I have to, she replied. He glanced at her. Why? Emma hesitated, then shook her head. I just do. There it was again, that wall. Not rude, not defensive, just closed. Caleb leaned against the fence. You ever worked a place like this before? No. Figures. A small pause. Then she said quietly, "But I've run things." That caught his attention. Run what? Emma met his eyes. For now. This is enough, she said. Not an answer. A boundary. And Caleb felt it, clear as day. That evening, Luke dragged her into the house before Caleb could stop him. "Emma made the chickens eat out of her hand," he announced proudly. Caleb raised an eyebrow. "That so?" Emma shrugged slightly. "They're not that hard." Luke grinned. "She's staying, right?" Caleb looked at her, then at his son, then back at her again. "You planning to tell me the truth anytime soon?" he asked. Emma didn't flinch. "No," she said honestly. That answer hung in the air. Luke looked confused. "What truth?" "Nothing you need to worry about," Caleb said quickly. Then, after a long pause, 3 days, he told her. "You stay 3 more days." Luke lit up instantly. "Yes." Emma didn't smile, but something softened in her expression. "Thank you," she said again. And this time it sounded different, less forced, more real. But Caleb knew better than to relax, because whatever she was hiding, it hadn't caught up to her yet. On the 5th day, trouble finally showed up. Not loud, not dramatic, just a black SUV rolling slowly down the dirt road like it didn't belong there, but didn't care. Caleb saw it first. He was fixing a broken gate when the dust trail caught his attention. His grip tightened slightly on the wrench as the vehicle got closer, tires crunching over gravel like a warning. Out here, people didn't just pass by. They came for a reason. Emma was near the barn, carrying feed. She saw it too, and for the first time since she arrived, she froze. Not confusion, not curiosity, fear, real sharp, controlled fear. Caleb noticed immediately. "Friend of yours?" he asked quietly, stepping closer to her. Emma didn't answer. That was answer enough. Came to a slow stop a few yards away. The engine stayed running. 2 men stepped out. Clean, well-dressed, the kind of men who didn't belong anywhere near a struggling ranch. One of them adjusted his cuffs like he was stepping into a meeting, not onto dirt. "Miss Carter," the taller one said calmly. The name hit the air like a crack. Emma Carter. Caleb turned his head slightly toward her. So that was it. Not Emma, not just Emma. Carter. Now things started making sense, and somehow, less sense at the same time. Emma's voice was steady when she spoke. "You shouldn't be here." The man gave a polite smile. "We've been looking for you." Luke stepped out onto the porch just then. "Dad, who are they?" Caleb didn't take his eyes off the men. "Go inside, Luke. But now." Something in his tone made Luke listen. The door shut behind him. Silence settled again, thick and uncomfortable. "What do you want?" Emma asked. "To bring you back," the man replied simply. "You've been gone long enough. I'm not going anywhere. That's not really your decision anymore." Caleb stepped forward then, placing himself slightly in front of her without thinking too much about it. "She said she's not going," he said. The second man glanced at him, unimpressed. "This doesn't concern you." "Seems like it does," Caleb replied. Emma looked at him briefly, just a flicker, but it was enough to show something had shifted, something she didn't expect. The first man sighed lightly, like this was becoming inconvenient. "Miss Carter," he said, tone tightening just a bit, "your company is not a toy you can walk away from." Company. Caleb's mind clicked. CEO. Money. Power. Everything she said she wasn't here for. "You're making a mistake," the man continued. "Come back now, and we fix this quietly." Emma shook her head. "No. One word. Solid. Final." The man studied her for a long second. Then his eyes shifted to Caleb, and his voice dropped slightly. "This will follow you," he said. "Whether you wanted to or not." Caleb didn't respond, didn't move, didn't back down. After a tense pause, the men got back into the SUV. The engine revved, and just like that, they were gone. But the dust they left behind lingered. just like this silence. Caleb turned to Emma slowly. CEO? He asked. No point pretending anymore. Emma didn't deny it, didn't explain. She just looked at him and said quietly, I told you, you wouldn't trust me, and this time, she wasn't wrong. Caleb didn't say anything for a long time after they left. He just stood there, watching the dust settle like it might carry answers with it. It didn't. Behind him, the screen door creaked open slowly. Luke stepped out again, more cautious this time. Are they gone? Yeah, Caleb said, his voice low. They're gone. Luke looked toward Emma. Were they your friends? Emma didn't answer right away. No, she said finally. Not really. Luke frowned, trying to understand. Then he nodded like kids do when something doesn't make sense, but they accept it anyway. Okay. He walked back inside, just like that. Simple, easy. Caleb wished things were that simple. You should have told me, Caleb said once they were alone. Emma crossed her arms slightly, not defensive, just holding herself together. I tried, she replied. You didn't want details. That's not the same thing. No, she admitted. It's not. A quiet tension settled between them. Caleb ran a hand over his face. You're a CEO? Of what? Emma hesitated. Then she said it plainly. A tech company. That didn't help much, but it told him enough. Money, power, influence. The kind of world that didn't mix with his. The kind of people who send suits to drag you back? He asked. They weren't here to drag me, she said. Not yet. That word stuck. Yet. Caleb exhaled sharply. So what happens next? More of them show up? Probably. And you're just staying? Emma met his eyes. If you let me. That hit something in him. Not anger, not exactly. More like pressure. Like the weight of a decision he didn't ask to make. You've got people chasing you, he said. You've got money, a whole company, whatever that means. And you end up here, asking to sleep in a barn like none of that exists. Emma didn't interrupt, didn't defend. She just listened. That doesn't make sense, he finished. I know, she said quietly. Then explain it. For a moment, it looked like she might, like she was right on the edge of saying something real. But then, I can't, she said. And just like that, the wall was back. Caleb let out a frustrated breath and shook his head. That's the problem. You can't, or you won't. Emma didn't correct him, because they both knew it was the second one. That evening felt different, quieter, heavier. Luke still talked to her, still followed her around like nothing had changed, but Caleb saw it now, the distance, the gap between who she was and what she was pretending to be. After dinner, Luke fell asleep early on the couch. Emma stood by the doorway, looking out into the dark. You can ask me to leave, she said suddenly. Caleb looked at her. You probably should. There was no emotion in her voice, just honesty. That made it worse. Caleb leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. He thought about the SUV, the men, the warning. Then he looked at his son, asleep and peaceful for once, and then back at her. You bring trouble, he said. Emma nodded slightly. I know. A long pause. Then, stay, Caleb said. The word surprised even him. Emma didn't react right away. Why? She asked quietly. Caleb shrugged, like it didn't matter. But it did. Because you haven't lied, he said. Not really. A small silence followed that. And for the first time, Emma looked like she didn't have an answer. The days that followed settled into something almost normal, and that was the dangerous part, because it made everything easier to forget. Emma stopped feeling like a stranger, not completely, but enough. She learned quickly, faster than Caleb expected. Within a week, she could handle most of the basic work without asking. Feeding animals, fixing simple things, even managing Luke when he got too curious or too talkative. And Luke had already decided she was part of their world. "Emma, look," he shouted one afternoon, running across the yard with a crooked wooden toy he'd made. She crouched down without hesitation. "That's actually good," she said. "Really?" "Yeah. Needs balance, though." She adjusted one side slightly. "Now try." Luke beamed. Caleb watched from a distance. That bothered him more than anything else. Not the suits, not the secrets, but how easily she fit into something she didn't belong in. Later that evening, Caleb found her sitting on the fence, staring out at the open land. "You always think this much?" he asked. Emma didn't look at him. "Only when I stop moving." "That sounds like a problem." "It is." He leaned against the fence beside her. "You run a whole company, right? People listen to you, do what you say?" "Yes. And now you're here, taking orders from a guy fixing broken fences." That got the smallest reaction, a faint exhale that almost sounded like a laugh. "Yeah," she said. "Life's weird like that." Caleb studied her for a moment. "You miss it?" Emma was quiet, too quiet. "I miss control," she said finally. "Not the rest." That answer stuck with him. "Control over what?" She glanced at him this time. "Everything," she said, and there it was again, that honesty that didn't explain enough, but somehow felt real anyway. That night things shifted, not dramatically, just enough to matter. Luke had a nightmare. It wasn't unusual, but this time Caleb didn't get there first. Emma did. He found her sitting on the edge of Luke's bed, speaking softly, while the boy clung to her like he'd known her forever. "It's okay," she murmured. "You're safe." Caleb stood in the doorway, unnoticed. Luke's breathing slowly calmed. His grip loosened. Within minutes, he was asleep again. Emma didn't move right away. She just sat there, staring at nothing. And for a second, she looked lost. Not powerful, not in control. Just someone holding on to a quiet moment like it might disappear. Caleb stepped back before she noticed him. The next morning, things felt different. Not awkward, not tense, just closer. And that was the problem, because Caleb knew better. People like her didn't stay. Whatever she was running from, it would catch up. And when it did, it wouldn't just take her. It would take whatever this was becoming, too. It caught up faster than Caleb expected. 3 days later, the quiet broke again. But this time, it didn't come in a black SUV. It came through a phone call. Emma had avoided her phone since she arrived. Caleb had noticed that early on. It stayed off, buried in her bag like something she didn't want to exist. Until that morning, it rang, sharp, sudden, out of place. They were both outside when it happened. Caleb was fixing a water line, and Emma was stacking feed bags nearby. The sound froze her. Completely. She stared at the bag for a second, like it might explode if she touched it. "Don't," Caleb said instinctively. He didn't know why he said it, but something about her reaction told him whatever was on the other end of that call wasn't good. Emma swallowed slowly, then reached for it anyway. Her hand trembled just slightly as she answered. "Hello." Silence stretched for a moment. Then, her expression changed. Not fear this time. Something heavier. Something personal. "How did you get this number?" she asked quietly. Caleb stood up, wiping his hands, watching her closely. Another pause. Then her voice dropped. "No, I'm not coming back." A longer silence. Her jaw tightened. "You don't get to say that anymore." That hit different. Caleb could hear it. Even without knowing who was on the line, this wasn't business. This was something else. Something deeper. Emma turned slightly, walking a few steps away like she didn't want him to hear. But it didn't matter. Her voice cracked just enough. "I did everything you asked," she said. "Everything." Caleb frowned. That didn't sound like a CEO talking to employees. That sounded like family. Then came the words that shifted everything. "I almost died doing it." Silence. The kind that makes your chest feel tight. Caleb's grip tightened on the wrench in his hand. Emma closed her eyes briefly, steadying herself. "No," she said again, firmer now. "I'm done." Another pause. Then, "Anymore." That was the first time she said it out loud. Not to Caleb, not to herself, but like she finally meant it. Whatever voice was on the other end kept going, pushing, demanding. Emma's expression hardened. "You didn't care when I needed you," she said quietly, "so don't pretend now." And then she hung up, just like that. No hesitation, no second thoughts. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. Caleb walked closer, slower this time. "You want to tell me who that was?" he asked. Emma stared at the phone in her hand, then looked up at him. "My father," she said. That explained everything, and nothing at the same time. Caleb nodded slightly. "And the almost died part?" Emma held his gaze. For the first time, she didn't look like she was going to avoid it, but whatever she was about to say, it wasn't small. Emma didn't look away this time. "I collapsed in my office," she said, 3 months ago. Her voice was steady, but stripped down like she wasn't trying to protect anything anymore. "Stress, lack of sleep, my body just gave out." Caleb didn't interrupt. She continued. "They said it wasn't just physical. Said if I kept going like that, next time wouldn't be a warning." A dry pause. But my father didn't hear any of that. To him it was weakness. Something to fix. Something to push through. Caleb frowned slightly. "So you ran?" Emma shook her head. "No," she said. "I walked away. There was a difference, and he understood it. I built that company from nothing," she added. "Every decision, every risk, it was mine. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being mine." Her grip tightened slightly around the phone. "I stopped being mine." That line hung in the air, heavy, real. Caleb leaned back against the fence, exhaling slowly. "And you think hiding out here fixes that?" Emma looked around. The land, the quiet, the simple, imperfect life. "No," she said honestly, "but it gave me space to hear myself again." A pause, then softer, and for the first time in years, "I'm not exhausted." That hit him, because he could see it now, not just the tiredness from before, but the slow change over the past days. She wasn't pretending here, she was recovering. Luke ran out of the house just then, breaking the tension like always. "Are you leaving?" he asked suddenly, looking between them. Emma blinked. "What?" "I heard you talking," he said. "People always leave." The words landed harder than they should have. Caleb glanced at his son, then at Emma. She crouched down in front of Luke. "I don't know yet," she said gently. "But if I do, it won't be like that." Then nodded, like that was enough. Kids didn't need perfect answers, just honest ones. That evening felt different. Not heavy, not tense, clear. Like something unspoken had finally settled. Caleb stood on the porch as the sun dipped low across the land. Emma walked up beside him. "I should go back," she said. He didn't react immediately. "Yeah," he said after a moment. "Probably." A small silence followed. "But not because they want me to," she added. Caleb glanced at her. "Because I choose to, that mattered. More than anything else she'd said." A week later, she was gone. No big goodbye, no dramatic moment, just a quiet morning, an empty barn, and a note left on the table. "Thank you for reminding me who I am." Luke was quiet that day. Caleb too. But something had changed. Not everything, but enough. Months later, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a single photo. A new office. Simpler, different. And on the back, written in plain handwriting, "I didn't go back to who I was. I built something better." Caleb folded the photo slowly, a faint smile pulling at his lips. Some people don't come into your life to stay. They come to fix something. And sometimes they fix you too. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's survival. We learn that no matter how powerful, rich, or successful someone looks, they can still feel lost inside. True strength is choosing yourself, even when the world expects something else. And sometimes, the simplest people and places heal us in ways nothing else can